Day 64 of This Is Not Advice. Back from a long weekend, and we at Bloomberg Beta we're fortunate to get to take a coordinated Friday relax from home day as a team to keep our energies up so we can keep working. And let's answer a question about work. We've got a theme this week too, right, man?
Yeah, we figured it's like back to school week for many parents in particular. And so we wanted to do something about like managing your personal and professional lives. Oh, there are a couple honks behind me. So today's question came up in the context of like, if you're somebody thinking about doing something new, especially during crazy year, and if you wanted to start a company, how am I supposed to pay myself, or how much am I supposed to pay myself?
This question about how to handle your own personal money when you do a startup is one of these things that is both central, arguably the most important early decision, because it enables you to do it, or can enable you to do it, and something that people are like very reticent to talk about because of general taboos in our society about money. And there are also things that affect people really differently depending on their life circumstances. I mean, it goes without saying, like, if you grew up in a family where mom and dad can't cover rent for you, it's one thing to be ramen profitable when your parents are paying for rent. And for those of us who grew up not coming from families that had generational wealth, we had to figure out a way to make it work. In my case, it was saving from prior jobs and doing two things at once. But I think, I guess my point is saying it is a problem to be solved. And in our modern world, there are often ways to solve the problem without needing to put out another mortgage on your house. And most of the best founders ever did not bet the farm. I mean, there are dramatic stories of those who did, but most of them, it's not that they are more risk-seeking than you or me. It's that they manage risk very skillfully. And so the first thing I'd say is, as a matter of principle, as an investor, when you have outside money coming in, we believe that you should pay yourself enough so that you can live sustainably. And we often ask founders what that is. The conversation doesn't always go perfectly because sometimes founders send up a flare saying like, hey, I need help. And we don't quite get, sometimes it's in code and we don't hear it correctly. But our intention is to do that. If you are self-funding in the beginning, then of course you own it all and you can figure out how much you wish to pay yourself based on what you need. I find that on average, most founders tend to pay themselves too little, not too much, because they're so concerned with how it'll look. They're so concerned with making sure the business's capital is used well. And so finding a way to pay yourself sustainably. And that, I guess the thing I'd say is the answer to how much depends a ton on your life circumstances. Your co-founder is like a mom who is the sole provider for a family with two kids. Her need is going to be very different than if you are a recent college graduate, or if you're on your third career. You may be wealthy enough to not need any salary, where it just won't matter. And then the last thing I'd just say is that there are rare cases, and it's happened once or twice in almost 10 years of being an investor, where somebody goes the other way, where you have somebody who raises $1 million and wants to pay themselves $350,000. And I had one case where a founder said to me, he was pitching us and he said, I promise I'm worth it. Like, you won't ever be, I don't know, like you won't ever worry about this, being a good investment. And it's like, okay, but I'm not hiring you for a job. Like, you're pitching me a company and I want you to use the resources responsibly all in all. And so you telling me that you taking like a $70K pay cut and hiring somebody to do that isn't the right trade. And it might not be the right trade, but it was a difficult enough conversation and it felt like our values were misaligned enough that we just decided not to move forward. So that's how I think of it.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that conversation of like where you are in your life circumstance and what that means in terms of your financial needs is like such an important conversation, especially if you're thinking about starting something with another person, making sure that you both see eye to eye in that, because you might, to your point, if one of you is a single parent or single provider of your home versus like you're, lucky enough to have a bunch of savings and you can live off that for like 6 to 12 months or so, it's a very different circumstance. So I don't know if there is, this probably goes back to maybe all the answers are, it depends, but there isn't like a clear cut dollar figure that I think is like right for
everything always depends, but in the aggregate, it's like, no, you should pay yourself enough to be able to live. And that is the principle, even if the specific number varies. And it depends a lot, like you said, on your life circumstances. And, this is one of the things that keeps privilege alive and well, unfortunately, in the startup world, is if you start off, the head of a major accelerator once told me all of our best founders are already rich. And I was like, I can't believe you think that. And what if it's true? And it turns out not to be true for them, but whatever.
Yeah. And the one other thing I would say is that this goes back to one of our earlier episodes, that there are ways to de-risk that jump before you go full time, perhaps. Like maybe you've been working on it as a side project. Maybe you've been consulting on it. Maybe it's the thing that you lose sleep over. And so now you know that you're like desperate to go do this thing. So there are ways to manage the steps in between I'm employed to I am now self-employed.
Totally. 100%. 100%. All right.
Well, we're talking about managing personal, professional risks, maybe. And so we'll be back tomorrow. And so if this was helpful, or if you have other questions, please share with us on any of our social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Periscope.
Yay. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Roy. Bye.